Welcome to a three-part series training our Stage 1 Fundamentals of Wing Chun. So I'm breaking it up into 3 parts, with this first part covering our open and closing stance, changing guards, palms, vertical punch, and eye strikes. The second part is going to cover elbows, knees, and our stamp kicks. And the final part is going to cover our footwork. So these are our basic building blocks of our Wing Chun. So I wanted to break it down a little bit more and explain a bit more as we're training the movements, so you can build up a better idea of what you're doing. So the first thing is our basic stance, and it's our square on basic training stance that we use in Wing Chun, which looks like this. So if we take this basic stance, this is a training stance. It's not a fighting stance per se. It's just to train specific concepts of Wing Chun and train the Wing Chun framework that we build everything else upon. So we need to really understand what it's teaching us when we do it. And this fundamental concept of triangles in Wing Chun, or having a focal point, an aim to where we're always going towards, is within our first basic stance. So the first thing we do before we do anything is bring our feet together, pull our head to the sky, so we can create a central line going through our body. And that is the longitudinal axis. And this axis is important in Wing Chun because all our pivoting from this basic stance is done on this axis. For example, when we start pivoting, we work on maintaining that axis. And also, if we have an opponent, then we are trying to control their axis, their center of balance. So you need to be able to find your longitudinal axis, your center, through your body, going from your head, if you imagine a pole going through, all the way to the ground. So whenever we take up this stance, we're looking for that straight away. I'll show you an example to help you visualize. If this will show, if we just look here, I think that should, hopefully you can see that. But it's this axis here traveling all the way through from the top of our head, through the center of our body, out through the bottom, all the way to the ground. And you can see after we end up pivoting on that with a lot of our movements. And when we're doing the pivoting, I'll explain more how that works. So when we take up this stance, we need to think about that from the get-go. So feet together, you can bring your hands onto your center, because your center of balance is roughly 1.5 inches behind your belly button. So you can bring your hand on there, make sure your core's tucked in. You can bring it onto the same position on the back of you. And always take a second before you begin training to do this, so you can find that position. Then we're going to bring our hands down by our side. We're going to draw them up. And when we draw them up, we're drawing them up to roughly our solar plexus level. And we're getting our hand position used to being in this plane, this distance, and being here for after, whenever we need to do anything. It's a lot quicker if your hands are already at this height than if they're down and then you need to draw them up. So we're getting used to straight away our hands being at this level. So after, in a more natural manner, you wouldn't hold them like this obviously, but in a more natural manner, you could just get used to having them around here. So if anything happens, you can strike straight away, or you can defend yourself quickly. Then from there, we're going to bend our knees. And when we bend them, we don't just bend our knees, but we're actually thinking of dropping our weight to the ground. So feel your weight drop to the ground, feel the connection of your feet to the floor. but make sure you're maintaining your head to sky so your spine's straight. We open our feet, our toes, so we're opening our hips once, and then we do it again twice, and we open the heels on the second part. When we open the heels, we're forming that basic concept of a triangle. When we think about the triangle in Wing Chun, like I said earlier, we're focusing on that focal point, but we're trying to, in our training, embody it. So we actually focus on forming the shapes with our body, so we can create that Wing Chun body, that Wing Chun vehicle for when we're practicing our Wing Chun and when we use it. So we take that slightly with our feet as well, and it's slight. You don't need to squeeze everything in. It's just bring your toes in when you come to this initial position. Just bring your toes slightly in. So we're creating that focal point with our whole body, always towards the target in front of us, whether that be the eyes, the nose, the jaw, the throat, solar plexus, or the groin area. We're creating that focal point with our whole body. So you've got your straight line through your body, you're holding that shape through your body so your structure's upright. We're perfectly balanced now, so we're not leaning to one side, we're not leaning backwards or forwards. We feel the whole of the ground with the whole of our foot, and we've got a 50-50 weight distribution throughout our body, so we're perfectly balanced all the way through. Knees are slightly bent so your weights drop to the ground though. We don't want to be legs straight out, because obviously if any force comes in, you'll just get knocked backwards. We want our knees slightly bent, so there's like suspension. If you need to move after quickly, you can move. Another aspect of having our toes pointed in, but really it's not about having our toes pointed in, it's about that focus and also closing off the space, closing off our hips, so that if a strike comes into the groin area, you can cover quickly. You can cover this lower area with your leg. If your hips are open, then you can still cover, but it takes longer, and you're not really going to stand in general around like this where your toes are pointed out, which means your hips are open, because it's leaving everything open. So if someone went to kick you in the groin, it's harder to cover. Again, this is just a training stance, so it doesn't mean you're going to stand like this, you're going to assume any position, but it means that we're training to think about these concepts and train our body to move in a certain way. So after, when you're just standing there casually, if you need to block that, you can do it quickly because you've trained it. And finally, the last thing is with angling our feet like this, is we're creating a bit more stability when we're facing frontal to someone. Because if our feet are straight, like this, and someone pushes into you, straight away you end up going back onto your heels, because it's like a straight line of force going through. But if you slightly angle your feet, you create a bit more stability through, because you're covering more space with your foot, basically. So now you're creating more of a wedge. With the foot. So if something pushed into it, it's covering a bit more lines of space. So you're going to be a bit more stable rather than being straight on. If force came in, you just get knocked straight backwards. So for the lines of stability of your base as well, by just turning your foot slightly, you end up covering more space and creating more stability in your stance. So that means that after force comes in, you'll be able to keep your balance better, which is what we're always aiming for in Wing Chun, is maintaining our balance. And from there, when we close, it's the exact same process but backwards. Heels, toes, and push down. One final point, when we are opening up our stance, we don't want to lean or bobble around when we're doing it, so take care when you're doing it not to start leaning, sort of leaning like this and moving around. We want to stay stable, so when we drop our base, we're not tipping anywhere. And the same thing when we're opening, you're not sort of jumping up and down when you're doing it. Depending on the floor you're on, you might have to adjust a little bit, but if it's a flat surface, if you are training on a flat surface and you have a flat surface, then you can just focus on actually keeping that head the same level once you've dropped the whole time. And yes, when you close, heels, toes, pushing down. So let's give that a go. Hands down by your side, head to sky, straight spine, focusing on the longitudinal axis. Open. Close. Open. Close. Open. Close. Open. Close. Okay, so let's move on to our guards, but that stance, once we maintain that position, you need to keep that all the way through your training. So there's no point going to the arms and then suddenly you lose your stance. I used to come out of my stance all the time. My instructor used to always tell me, he's like, when are you gonna sit in your stance? It took me years, to be honest, just to get my stance right. So yeah, there's no point if you start doing your arms punching and all the different movements, but you haven't got your stance to support it, then that all kind of goes out the window after, because as soon as you make a connection with someone, you won't be able to maintain your shape because there's nothing supporting it. So you need, everything you do after comes from this basic stance. So take your time with it. That's why I'm breaking it down in this session. Instead of just training it, opening and closing, we're talking about the details a bit more because I want you guys to take it all in and build upon it. And I want you to have a strong foundation to build upon. So do take your time, try and feel how your body's moving when you're doing it, and try not to rush through this. And like anything, you have to train it over and over again, but it's more about your focus when you're training it more than anything. If you do 1,000 reps but you're thinking about something else, then you're not going to get much out of it because the quality won't be there. But if you focus on what you're doing, even if you don't have time to do 1,000,000 reps, but you focus in on what you're doing, then you're going to build up the quality of what you're doing to a good level. So let's move on to our guards. And our basic guards that we're going to practice now, again, teach us about the fundamental concepts of Wing Chun as an art, and also are about occupying space. Guards are really just about occupying space. And what I mean by that, if we take our center line guard, and this is if we created our triangle with our hands, we're creating that wedge, then that is where our center line guard ends up on. So with our center line guard, we're occupying that central line, which means that it's going to be more difficult for someone to strike down that line because simply your hands are there. So if your hands are there, no one's probably going to try and strike there because there's something in the way. And that's what we're doing when we put up our guard in that central line. But also with that, we're thinking about striking directly to our targets in Wing Chun, which are the eyes, the nose, the throat, the solar plexus. So your hands are already kind of ready to go to that line in the most economical way because they're already there. But you have to be aware that if you're going to occupy a space, people probably won't strike down that space, but they probably will strike around that space. So you have to be more aware of circular strikes coming in, hooks and things like this. You have to be more aware of that because, for example, if you had a wider guard, like we're going to do the dip sal guard after and other guards, if you had a wider guard, or say your hands came out further, then most likely someone's going to strike straight down the middle because they're not going to try and strike around your guard the long way around. They're going to try and go direct to your face. If you're occupying the center, it's more likely they'd strike around it. So you have to be ready for that when you're using a guard, you need to know the strengths and weaknesses of it. And if you're occupying the center, then it's good to protect it, and it's good to direct your attacks on them straight lines, but you need to be aware that people are going to strike around it if you're doing that. This is our first basic guard in Wing Chun because, again, it embodies a lot of the principles of the art. And even though it's quite simple, it's teaching you them direct lines of where you want to get to. So much like if you had a weapon, you had a gun or something, you point it to where you want and then you fire. That's kind of what is similar to the basic guard in Wing Chun. That's why we have that triangle. We look at where we want to go, and then, for example, we could punch, or you do an eye strike, but it's economy of motion. We're taking that most direct line when we do it. In fact, one of my friends in the army showed me the other day some of the basics on how to draw a gun, how to draw a pistol, and the concept was actually remarkably similar to Wing Chun as an art, because I never really thought about this before, but the position he showed me for drawing quickly is actually to draw it close in to your body first, here. So instead of taking it all the way out and then firing, your first position is actually here. So you'd go 1, close in, because it's really quick to come to your center of your body, bam, and fire, 2, 3. So you'd cover them 3 planes, 1, close in, 2, 3. But for firing quickly, it's quicker to do that than it is to take it out. And we actually, even in the Wing Chun forms, when you practice the forms, this is what you're doing. You're coming into the center and then drawing forward, or you're in the center and you're drawing forward. It just reminded me of Wing Chun in that aspect, that for quick draw, quick fire, Wing Chun is a close quarter self-defense combat for being when you're close in with someone. Economy of motion in general is going to be quicker to come to your center and go forward. Or take that triangle, take that line, that diagonal line out, bam, instead of drawing back to strike. So this is the fundamental concept of, one of the fundamental concepts of Wing Chun as an art. Again, shown just through these basic shapes. So in this fundamentals, we look at 3 different guards. And that's our basic guard, our funnel guard, and our dip cell guard. And they all have different uses and they all cover different areas of space. But we're just going to go through them. We're going to practice them. We're going to go to our basic guard, tunnel guard, dip cell, and pull back, like you've already done in the lesson videos. Let's give it a go. We're going to go basic guard, funnel guard, dip cell, pull back. And we can alternate other hand forward on your basic guard. To the count. 1, 2, 3. I forgot to alternate. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Good. My alternating went out the window. I got confused. I totally forgot to alternate and I did some random order, which is fine. So when we're thinking about these guards, I really wanted to, again, I'm giving you some other ideas. I'm not going over the particular techniques of the guard or too much into detail because you would have already done that in the lesson videos about each of these particular techniques. So how to form the shapes properly, we've already gone over. This is just to go over the training a bit and give you more idea about what each of these positions, what each of these techniques are trying to teach you, because each technique is trying to teach you something. So it's more to give you an idea of that, basically. And when I go over later more application, then you'll get more of an idea on how to use them as well. Let's move on to our palms. I might break these training sessions up a bit more because actually, as I'm explaining it, I'm realizing they might go on longer than I thought. So I might break this up a bit more actually, and just so I can explain a bit more about each of these parts. But we'll see. Let's see how long it ends up. So we're going to move on to our palms, our vertical palm and horizontal palms. And when we're practicing these, we're going to start adding in a bit more energy. Really, when we're practicing our guards, we just want to get positioning. When we're practicing our stance, we want to get positioning. It's not about adding in energy, explosive energy yet. But once we get to our strikes, we're going to start adding in explosive energy. But remember, the first set, we always do a warm-up set. And that's for you to get your positioning and make sure you're doing the technique to the best of your ability before we start adding in energy, speed, power, because then you won't be focusing so much on the technique of your palm. You'll be focusing about training it into a weapon. So use that first set as a warm-up. But let's begin with our vertical palms. I'll show you one time. And we're just going to bring our palm forward to the center and change. And when we strike, we pull our other hand back at the same time with the same energy when we're doing it more explosively in a second. Focus on keeping the elbow down, so not lifting up our shoulder, not lifting up our elbow, but everything's dropped. So if you imagine a straight line after, you can drive palm upwards, because this is to the chin or to the nose. So our elbows drop so we can drive through, so we're using elbow force, not thinking about so much muscular force. So let's open up our basic stance. And we're going to start off, let's bring our right palm forward and bring it to the center. So not out to the side, but imagine someone in front of you and you're coming up underneath their chin. Fingers not too wide, not squeezed in either, just relax, but tuck your thumb in slightly. Obviously not across your palm because you can end up hitting it. And remember, we're striking with the ball, the bottom of our palm. So we're going to go 1 and we're going to hit with our left arm, putting the other hand back. Let's get position first. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Let's add in about 50 to 60% power. 1, 2, remember we bring in our breathing. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, taking care not to extend our joints fully, but keep a slight bend to protect our joints. 8, 9, 10. Okay, there were our warm-up sets, so now let's go 70 to 90% power. Remember, we never do 100% in the air, really, and if we do, we don't do many reps. Save 100% for your wall bag or a heavy bag or something that gives you resistance. Otherwise, if you do loads and loads of reps, you can end up hurting your joints. So to protect our joints, we save the full 100% going for it, or 110%. We save that for a heavy bag, a wall bag, wooden dummy, or partner with pads. That's what we save that for, so aim for 70 to 90% now. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to turn my breathing down because I forgot I've got the mic just here. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Let's do 5 more. Remember to pull the other hand back, bam, like this, bam, just as quick, just like you're doing a backwards elbow. Last 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pull back a second. And you can bring your left foot to right and close your stance. And just shake out a second. So we're going to move on to our horizontal palms from our funnel guard. And when we're doing this, still on our basic stance, we're going to bring our elbows, drop them in and down, and we're going to create that funnel. And for our horizontal palms, that's just the only changes, instead of our vertical, which with our fingers up, we're changing it to our fingers out. And we're still palming with our heel, but it comes in from our guard. Boom, boom, boom. Really short range. So if our guard's out, we're not pulling back to strike, we're just going from here, like this, bam, into the chin. And you'd use this one more if you're on the side of someone, you've stepped off and you're on the side, and you can strike the head off. Boom, coming across this way, away from you. It's really good always. The other reason palms are good is because if you strike someone's, same with the vertical, if you knock someone's head back, it becomes difficult for them to strike back because their balance is going off. So even if they get a strike off, they probably won't have power unless they're Prince Nassim or someone like this who knows how to strike like that. But most people, if you knock their head backwards, they're not going to be able to generate power. So the same with this, if someone wants to face you this way and you knock their head this way, it's going to be difficult for them to continue trying to attack you because you're knocking the head away and the rest of the spine normally follows where the head goes. And also your palms are a safe strike. Hitting with a palm is always a lot safer than hitting with a punch. So for self-defense, palms are really good because there's less chance of injuring yourself. Now, the only downside of a palm is it covers a little less distance. With your hands, eye strikes are the best because they cover the longest distance. As soon as you close to a fist, you lose an inch or more of distance. Then when you go to a palm, you lose even a little bit more. So you have to know your distances. But another advantage is if you put your palm in someone's face, you can cover their eyes as well when you strike. A punch might not block someone's eyesight, but a palm will. So again, there's many advantages and there's also always, like with anything, some disadvantages. If we open up our stance, we come forward with our funnel guard and we're going to alternate with our strikes. Let's do a warm-up set for positioning. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Remember, we're sunk in our stance, weight dropped, but head to sky. Arms don't draw back when you're striking. Let's do another set, 50 to 60%. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And let's do our final set, 70 to 90%. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Good, draw back. Left foot to right. Close your stance. Grab a sip of water if you need to. So we're going to look at 2 more techniques, our vertical punch and my favorite self-defense move, eye strikes, and a big part of wingchun. But to start off, we're going to look at that vertical punch. And it's very similar to our basic guard, it just changes to our punch now. So your basic guard changes to your vertical punch, just closing to a fist. And when we're doing this, we're taking care to keep our elbows down. Remember, if force is coming back into us, the more our elbow goes up, the harder it is to maintain our shape, our position, and also the more it's going to dissipate out and go into our shoulders. We keep our elbows down, we can create a stronger structure. If you imagine holding shopping bags, it's easy to hold them when they're close in to you and your elbows are close in, but the further your elbow goes out, the harder it is to hold them and the more muscular strain it becomes. In Wing Chun, we're trying to use our joints to our maximum efficiency when striking. So we're trying to take out the muscular force. So when you're doing your punch, I want you to focus on using your joints more than anything. Now get a bit closer, open up your stance. Let's make our triangle with our hands out in front of us. Pull our right hand back and close to a fist. Remember, this back hand doesn't come all the way back. Don't go any further than the crook of your arm. So if you're close into someone, you want the strike after. When we go into our chain punching from this vertical punch, you want your strike after to come quickly. So you're not going to draw it further back to make it bigger. You're going to keep it no further than your crook of your arm and keep it close as you can forward to go for the next strike after. Let's go to the count. 1 set for positioning. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 50 to 60%. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Final set, 70 to 90, taking care not to overextend on our joints. Still keep shoulder sunk, elbow down. Even when we go quicker, you're still keeping that bend in your arm. I'm never fully extending out like this. Everything is still down. If you can't do that yet and you throw it and you feel like you're going to injure your elbow, then slow it down. So always go to your level, but if you're comfortable, you've trained enough slowly, you should be able to have a stopping point. And that's why it's also important to hit on wall bags and bags, so you learn your distancing and you condition the bones in your arm as well. So it's important to also practice these on something as well. But let's go for it. Let's go 70 to 90%. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Let's do a couple more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Pull back. Stay in your stance, just shake your hands out. Let's go straight into our eye strikes. But one final point about them punches is that vertical punch does lead into your chain punch after, but there's many different ways of punching in Wing Chun, more than most people realize. There's loads of different variations of the vertical punch. But in application, one of the things to bear in mind is your actual hand position. So for example, if someone's in front of you and you're punching from here out, you'd want to angle the fist slightly so your knuckles match the jawline. So they would match this actual jawline when you're striking. If you imagine that. You wouldn't necessarily want to hit someone straight on like this on the jaw, but you could, depending on their height, do it straight onto their nose or the solar plexus. And again, there's so many variations of the punch that it depends what your purpose in it is, and we will go over that more in the intermediate and the stage 2, all the different variations, because once we become a chain, you can turn it into a hammer. You can drive upwards with your vertical punch, coming up like this. You can come down. You can use your wrist in the strike to generate power from close range, and many different variations of that as well. So there's loads of variations, but it's just what you're practicing at the time. Be very clear and specific. In this one, we're just really practicing taking that central line and driving forward. So we're trying to get everything in that triangular position. And finally, my favorite strike in Wing Chun, I think there's quite, or one of my, I'm going to say one of my favorite, but definitely my top 3 Wing Chun techniques, because it's so simple. And in a self-defense situation, if someone's bigger than you, then you have to think, if someone's bigger, stronger than you, and you need to create an opportunity for you to get away, escape, or survive that situation, because Wing Chun's about surviving a situation. It's about self-defense, protecting yourself in a life-threatening situation, or protecting your loved ones. So eye strikes are a great tool that it doesn't matter how big you are, if you basically poke someone in the eyes, it's probably going to work. Whereas if someone's really big, really tough, and you punch them, they might still continue. Well, most likely they're still going to continue. You need to have a really good strike to stop some aggressive person attacking you. A very good palm, a very good punch, which you will develop through your training. But eye strikes are something that really a beginner can pick up, and if they train them a bit, then, and they're quick with them, then it can give them an opportunity to escape, survive a situation, or a setup, boom, for a punch, because they're a very quick move. So we're not doing, there's different eye strikes, again, variations, but in our stage 1 fundamentals, we learn more, it's more like a flick with our eye strikes like this, because it's great to learn about your wrist power this way at the beginning, and also it's a great way that you can do it to someone and you're not going to injure you're most likely not going to really badly injure their eyes. You know, if you do like thrusting fingers and things like this, then yes, realistically you could really injure someone's eyes. But if you do this one, then it's more like a flick in the eyes than anything, which if you do, is going to make someone either turn away or try and protect their eyes, as long as you make contact with it. So obviously you've already done, again, like I said before, I've gone over the technique of this in the lesson videos in the stage 1 course. So we're just going to practice it. So let's open up our stance. I'm going to come to our funnel guard. I'm going to practice from here. Eye striking out first, our vertical eye strikes, and then our horizontal. Again, much similar to the horizontal palm, we just take care that when we strike, we don't draw back to strike. We're just going from A to B. Bam, straight out. It looked like this. You do need strength in your fingers, put energy into your fingers when you do this, but keep the wrist loose, elbow loose, shoulder loose. So let's go a warm-up set to get positioning, vertical eye strikes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Let's go 50 to 60%. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Good. Let's do our final set of our vertical eye strikes, 70 to 90%. Really as quick as you can now. Relax. Think of just throwing, boom, your energy out there, but definition and shape at the end. Let's give it a go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Couple more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Good. We're going to move on to our horizontal eye strike now. And just remember, as always, so same thing, just when you strike out, we're still going to come back to our funnel guard. Let's do a warm-up set to get position horizontal now, using the full range of the wrist. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Final set, 17 to 90%. Taking care to strike forward. Don't be striking out anywhere else yet. For now, we're just focusing on coming forward with our strikes. Final set. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, now the final set. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And pull back. Left foot to right. Push down. And that brings us to the end of our part 1 of our fundamental stage 1 training session in this 3-part series. I'll see you in part 2. And don't forget, sorry, come back! Feet together, left hand with yourself, right hand fist, and just pay respects.